Kylie Kelce had always thought of herself as a woman who could see through the noise. Growing up in a family where fame and scrutiny were everyday occurrences, she had learned to filter out the rumors, the media frenzy, the relentless speculation that followed her brother-in-law, Travis Kelce, like a shadow. But this was different. It was a late summer evening when the first ripple of truth reached her. Jason was scrolling through his phone, his brows furrowed in that way he did when something genuinely surprised him. The soft hum of the TV played in the background, the low murmur of an old football game blending with the clinking of glasses in their kitchen. Their daughters were finally asleep, the rare silence in the house making the moment feel almost sacred. "What's up?" Kylie asked, drying her hands on a dish towel, eyeing the way Jason's mouth curled into a half-smile, half-scoff. He tilted his screen toward her. A text, brief, almost cryptic, from someone close to the team. "It's happening. Travis and Taylor. Not a joke." At first, she laughed. Not because it was absurd. Travis had always been the kind of man who thrived in the spotlight, who chased big moments, but because of the sheer impossibility of it. Taylor Swift? The global icon? The woman whose music had underscored the most dramatic, heart-wrenching, and victorious moments of her own life? "No way," she said, shaking her head. But Jason's eyes weren't amused. They were sharp, considering, and for the first time, she felt it, that quiet pull in her chest, that instinct that told her this wasn't just another rumor. And then, just as quickly as the realization came, another truth settled in. This wasn't something that was going to stay private for long. Kylie didn't respond right away, her mind working faster than she could articulate. She and Jason had been through enough media storms to know what was coming, and if this was real, if Travis was actually dating Taylor Swift, it wasn't just going to be another tabloid headline. This was something bigger, something that would redefine the dynamics of their already high-profile family. She grabbed Jason's phone, rereading the message as if the words might change on the second glance. "When?" she finally asked, her voice more serious than she intended. "When did this start?" Jason exhaled, shaking his head slightly, his massive frame leaning back into the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "No idea. But apparently, it's real. Not just a fling, not just rumors. Someone close to him knew before it got out, and now we do too." Kylie's fingers gripped the dish towel a little tighter. This wasn't how she expected to find out, and something about it unsettled her. Not because Travis was dating someone. He had dated plenty of people before, but because of the way they were being told. If this was serious, why hadn't Travis told them himself? They weren't just family. They were close. They had always been open with each other, always included in the big moments. She thought about all the times Travis had shown up at their house, plopping down on their couch, raiding their fridge, talking to Jason for hours about everything and nothing. And yet, here they were, finding out like this. "So he just didn't tell us?" Kylie's voice had an edge now, one that Jason picked up on immediately. He shrugged, his expression somewhere between understanding and mild annoyance. Maybe he didn't want to deal with the reaction. You know how people are with her. You know how crazy this is going to get, right? "But we're not people," Kylie shot back. "We're family." This should have come from him, not some vague text from someone inside the team. Jason didn't disagree, but he also wasn't the type to dwell on things like this. You know how Trav is. He probably didn't think it was a big deal at first. Or maybe he just wanted to wait until he was sure. Either way, I don't think it was meant to be some secret from us. Kylie let out a slow breath, forcing herself to focus. She wasn't angry, not really. More than anything, she was surprised. And deep down, she knew Jason was right. Travis had always been spontaneous, always followed his own rhythm. He wasn't someone who planned things out meticulously, and that was something she had accepted about him years ago. If he was keeping this quiet, it wasn't necessarily a slight. It was just how he handled things. Still, something about it didn't sit right. She could already picture the chaos that was about to unfold. The media would lose its mind. Social media would explode. Every moment of this relationship would be dissected, analyzed, criticized, celebrated, torn apart. It wouldn't just be about Travis anymore. It would be about Taylor, and that meant a level of scrutiny that even someone as famous as Travis had never experienced. Kylie had seen firsthand what it was like when a football player's personal life became bigger than the game itself. But this was on another level entirely. This wasn't just sports news. This was global news. Jason must have seen the concern in her face because he sighed and put his phone down. Look, we'll talk to him. But let's not make this a thing, okay? It's his life. If he's happy, then that's what matters. Kylie nodded. But the unease in her stomach didn't fade. She wasn't worried about whether Travis and Taylor were a good match. She wasn't even thinking about that yet. What concerned her was the way this was all unfolding. The feeling that something massive was happening, and they were being pulled into it whether they wanted to be or not. She took another look at Jason's phone before finally setting it down on the counter. Yeah, she said slowly, but I have a feeling this is just the beginning. Jason didn't argue. He just picked up his drink, took a sip, and gave her a look that said he felt the exact same way. The next morning, Kylie woke up earlier than usual, her thoughts still lingering on the conversation from the night before. She wasn't someone who obsessed over gossip or let small things get under her skin, but this felt different. It wasn't about Travis dating someone famous. He had been in the public eye for years, and relationships came and went. What unsettled her was the way they had been left in the dark. The fact that this information had reached them through someone else instead of from Travis himself. It wasn't like him to be secretive, not with them, not when they had always been close. She knew he had his own way of handling things, but this was big, bigger than he probably even realized, and she hated the feeling of being caught off guard. She walked into the kitchen, expecting Jason to already be up, but the house was still quiet. The girls wouldn't be awake for at least another hour. So she took the opportunity to grab her phone and scroll through the news. Nothing yet. No official confirmation, no leaks, no blurry paparazzi photos of them together. That was good, but it wouldn't last. If they had found out, others would too. Someone would talk, and when they did, it would spread like wildfire. She put her phone down, staring at the countertop, thinking. She knew she had to call Travis, not to pry, not to interrogate him, but because she needed to hear it from him, not from whispers, not from speculation. She wasn't angry, but she wanted to understand why he hadn't told them, why he had chosen to keep this to himself when they had always been the ones he turned to first. She picked up her phone, hesitating for only a second before hitting the call button. It rang longer than usual, and for a moment, she thought he might not pick up. But then his voice came through, casual as ever. Yo, what's up? Kylie leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. I don't know, you tell me. There was a brief pause on the other end. Okay, what's this about? Travis. She didn't say anything else, letting the name hang in the air, waiting for him to connect the dots. She heard a soft exhale, the kind that told her he already knew where this was going. All right, I'm guessing you heard. She let out a short laugh, but there was no amusement in it. Yeah, I heard. From someone that wasn't you. He didn't respond right away, and she knew him well enough to know that meant he was trying to figure out the best way to handle this. He wasn't someone who panicked easily, but he also wasn't great at explaining himself when put on the spot. Finally, he spoke, his voice even. I wasn't keeping it from you. I don't know. I wanted to wait. Didn't want to make a big deal out of it before I knew what it really was. Kylie closed her eyes briefly, forcing herself to stay calm. Trav, we're not the media. You don't have to wait to tell us something like this. We're your family. You've told us about things way less serious than this, so why not this? Another pause, this one longer. Because I knew it was going to be different. And I didn't want all the extra stuff, all the questions, all the "are you sure about this?" talks. I just wanted to figure it out on my own first. Kylie ran a hand through her hair, trying to understand his perspective. She could see where he was coming from. Travis had always been independent, always made decisions on his own terms. But this wasn't just about him. I get that, I do. But can you really say you didn't think we'd want to hear it from you instead of through some random text from someone else? He sighed again, but this time, there was a hint of regret in it. Yeah, I should have told you. I just didn't want to deal with everything before I had to. And I knew once it was out, it wasn't just mine anymore. You know how it is. She did. And that was the part she hated. This wasn't just about Travis dating someone. It was about what came with it. It was about the press, the endless speculation, the people who would suddenly act like they knew every detail of their family's lives. It was about the scrutiny, the way every little interaction would be dissected. She had seen it happen before, but this was another level. Kylie took a deep breath, softening her tone just a little. Look, I just wanted to hear it from you. That's all. I don't care about the media. I don't care about the drama. I just care that we don't find out things about you like strangers. You know we've got your back always. There was another beat of silence before he responded, and this time, his voice was quieter. Yeah, I know. She let it sit for a second before exhaling. All right. So, is it serious? That made him chuckle, and just like that, the tension eased a little. Yeah, it is. Kylie smiled despite herself. Good. Then don't screw it up. Travis laughed. I'll do my best. She shook her head, relieved to have finally talked to him, even if she still didn't love how it had all played out. I'll hold you to that. And for the record, next time, just tell us. We're always going to find out anyway. He groaned playfully. Yeah. Noted. She could hear the shift in his voice, the way the weight of the conversation had lifted slightly, and she was glad they had talked, even if she still wasn't thrilled about how it had gone down. As she hung up, she leaned against the counter, staring out the window at the quiet street outside. The chaos hadn't hit yet, but it was coming, and now, at least, she knew they'd be facing it together. Kylie thought the conversation with Travis had settled things, but less than 24 hours later, it became clear that whatever control he thought he had over the situation was already slipping away. She was in the car with Jason, heading to a doctor's appointment, when her phone started vibrating nonstop in the cup holder. She ignored it at first, figuring it was just group chat noise or work emails. But when Jason glanced over at the screen during a red light, his expression shifted. You might want to check that, she sighed, picking up the phone, only to feel her stomach tighten at the sheer number of notifications. Every single one was a text, a news alert, or a social media tag, all centered around one thing. The first message she saw was from a close friend. It's out. Her eyes flickered down to the next notification, a headline that was spreading across every major outlet. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. The romance confirmed. She didn't even have to open the articles to know what was happening. Someone had talked. Someone had leaked it before Travis and Taylor had the chance to do it on their own terms, and now it was everywhere. Jason let out a low breath, clearly reading over her shoulder. Well, that didn't take long. Kylie didn't respond right away, her mind already working through what this meant. It wasn't just public now, it was a wildfire. There would be camera crews outside Travis's house by the end of the day, reporters reaching out to anyone who had ever met him looking for a comment, fans digging through every interaction they could find between the two of them. And Travis, who had thought he could ease into this on his own time, was about to realize that time no longer belonged to him. She called him immediately, not bothering with a text. The line rang twice before he picked up, his voice more tense than usual. Yeah, I know. Do you? Her tone was sharper than she intended, but she wasn't in the mood to sugarcoat things. Because it's everywhere, Trav. Someone sold the story. He let out a frustrated breath. I didn't think it would happen this fast. I thought we had more time. Well, you didn't. She glanced over at Jason, who was watching the road but clearly listening. Do you know who leaked it? No clue. But at this point, does it even matter? It's out, and now we have to deal with it. Kylie could hear the irritation in his voice, but underneath that, there was something else. He wasn't just annoyed. He was unsettled. Jason finally spoke up, his voice calm but firm. So what's the plan? Travis hesitated for a second before responding. We're just going to own it. No point in fighting it now. We were planning to go public anyway, just not like this. Kylie shook her head, glancing at the endless stream of headlines scrolling across her phone. Are you ready for what's coming? Because this isn't just people being curious, Trav. This is the kind of thing that doesn't stop. You know that, right? I know, he said, and this time, he sounded more sure. But I also know this isn't just about me. It's about her too. And she's been through this way worse than I have. If she can handle it, so can I. Kylie wasn't convinced it was that simple. She had seen what happened to people in the middle of a media storm, how it wore them down, how it twisted the smallest details into something unrecognizable. Travis was used to attention, but this was a different level. And what worried her the most wasn't just the press. It was the fans. She scrolled through social media as he spoke, already seeing the divide forming. Some were thrilled, treating it like a fairy tale come to life. Others were furious, picking apart every possible reason why Travis wasn't good enough for Taylor, why this relationship wouldn't last, why he was using her, why she was using him. There were people celebrating, people hating, people analyzing every word, every movement, every expression they had ever shared in public. And it had only been a few hours. Jason must have been reading over her shoulder again, because he let out a low whistle. Damn, they're already crazy about this. Travis laughed, but there was no humor in it. Yeah, no kidding. Kylie closed her eyes for a second, knowing there was no stopping it now. Just promise me something. Don't let this get to you. And don't let it get to her. I won't, Travis said, and for the first time, he sounded completely certain. This is real, Kentucky. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't. Kylie didn't say anything right away, just let his words settle. She had spent the last day wondering if this was just another thing for Travis, another moment of excitement that would pass. But hearing him now, she realized something. This wasn't just about dating someone famous. This wasn't about headlines or attention or the chaos that would follow. This was different. And that meant everything was about to change. Kylie knew things would escalate, but she hadn't expected the impact to hit so fast. By the time she and Jason made it home, their phones were still buzzing with notifications, the media storm growing by the minute. She saw clips of analysts discussing Travis's relationship as if it were a contract negotiation, fans dissecting old interviews, strangers arguing online as if they had a personal stake in the outcome. It was surreal, but not surprising. Jason locked the front door behind them, exhaling as he tossed his keys onto the counter. I give it 12 hours before someone's camp releases a statement. Kylie didn't argue. That was the way things worked. If you didn't control the story, someone else would, and right now, Travis and Taylor had to make a decision. Stay silent and let speculation spiral, or confirm it and brace for the next wave. Neither option was ideal, but there was no going back now. She sat down at the kitchen table, finally responding to a few texts from friends and family who had seen the news. Some messages were lighthearted, joking about how she should have warned them. Others were more serious, asking if Travis was ready for this, if they were worried about what it would mean for their family. She didn't have an answer for that yet. Jason sat across from her, his expression more thoughtful than concerned. Think he'll be all right? Kylie leaned back, crossing her arms. I think he thinks he'll be all right, but I don't think he understands what's coming. Jason nodded slowly, considering that. And what about her? That was the real question. Taylor wasn't new to this kind of attention. She had lived with it for years. But being with Travis meant stepping into a different kind of scrutiny. Football culture, sports media, the relentless obsession with every game, every move, every moment. It wasn't the same as the music industry. And for Travis, it meant dealing with a level of public fascination that went beyond anything he had faced before. It was one thing to be a beloved athlete. It was another to become the center of a global frenzy. Before Kylie could answer, her phone lit up with a name she was expecting. Travis. She picked up, putting it on speaker so Jason could hear. All right, Travis said, skipping past any greeting. It's happening. We're putting something out. Kylie exchanged a glance with Jason before responding. You sure? Yeah. We talked about it, and it just doesn't make sense to let this spiral. Better to just own it and move on. Kylie could hear the exhaustion in his voice, the weight of the last few hours settling in. You talked to her? Yeah. We both knew this was coming, just not this soon. Jason leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. What's the statement? Nothing dramatic. Just a confirmation, something short. No details, no extra commentary. Just making it clear that it's real so people stop making things up. Kylie knew that wouldn't stop anything, but she also knew there was no better option. The longer they waited, the worse the speculation would get. All right, just be ready for the next wave, because it's not slowing down. Travis let out a tired chuckle. Yeah, no kidding. There was a brief pause before Kylie spoke again. And you're good with all this? Like, really good? For the first time, Travis hesitated. Not long. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but Kylie did. She knew him too well. But when he finally answered, his voice was steady. Yeah, I am. She wanted to believe him, and maybe he did believe it himself. Maybe, in his mind, this was just another part of the ride, something to handle and move past. But Kylie also knew that things didn't always go the way you expected, that once something like this started, it took on a life of its own. And no matter how much Travis thought he was in control, the truth was, he wasn't. All right, she finally said, exhaling. Then let's see what happens. Jason leaned back, shaking his head with a small smirk. This is gonna be a hell of a ride. Travis laughed, but it wasn't the usual carefree one. It was one that acknowledged reality, that understood what was coming. Yeah, it is. And just like that, the moment they had been trying to avoid became official. The world knew, and there was no turning back. Kylie barely had time to process the conversation with Travis before the first wave hit. The moment the statement was released, everything escalated. News outlets updated their headlines in real time. Sports analysts suddenly became relationship experts, and social media turned into a battlefield between fans, critics, and those who just wanted to be part of the noise. She knew it was coming, but even she was taken aback by the intensity of it all. She sat at the dining table, scrolling through article after article, seeing the same words repeated in different variations. Taylor Swift confirms romance with NFL star Travis Kelce, Kansas City's favorite tight end and pop superstar go public. Football meets pop royalty. What this means for the NFL and Swifties. It wasn't just entertainment news anymore. Sports networks were running segments on it. Economists were predicting a surge in NFL merchandise sales, and even political commentators were making absurd connections to it. Jason walked in from the other room, glancing at her phone screen before shaking his head. It's ridiculous how fast this happened. Kylie set the phone down, rubbing her temple. You think it's bad now? Give it another 24 hours. They're just getting started. He pulled out a chair across from her, cracking open a bottle of water. Think he regrets it yet? She exhaled, thinking back to her conversation with Travis. Not yet, but he will. Jason studied her for a second before nodding. Yeah, probably. It wasn't about Travis not wanting to be with Taylor, that much was clear. He wouldn't have put out a statement if he wasn't sure. But what Kylie worried about was how much he underestimated what was coming. He had dealt with attention before, but not like this. Being a famous athlete was one thing. Being attached to Taylor Swift was something else entirely. The NFL world had its share of media pressure, but it was nothing compared to the machine that surrounded her. Her phone buzzed again, and she sighed before picking it up. This time, it was a text from an unknown number. She clicked it open, only to find a message that made her stomach tighten. How does it feel knowing your brother-in-law is selling out for fame? She stared at the words for a second, then deleted the message without responding. It wasn't the first, and it wouldn't be the last. People had already started spinning their own narratives. Travis was using Taylor for attention. Taylor was using Travis for publicity. Their families were involved in some elaborate PR stunt. It didn't matter that none of it was true. Once a story was out, people would believe whatever version fit their own perspective. Jason must have noticed the change in her expression. What now? She shook her head, setting the phone aside. Nothing worth talking about. He didn't push, but he didn't have to. He knew exactly what was happening. A few hours later, Kylie checked in with Travis again. He picked up quickly, but the exhaustion in his voice was obvious. Having fun yet? She asked, trying to keep it light. He let out a short breath. You wouldn't believe the amount of people suddenly trying to reach me. Reporters, brands, people I haven't talked to in years. It's like everyone thinks they're owed something now. She leaned against the counter, watching the sun set through the window. Yeah, well, you knew this was coming. I knew it was gonna be big, he admitted. Didn't think it would feel like this. That was the part he hadn't expected. The way people suddenly treated him differently, like he had changed overnight, just because his personal life was now part of the biggest story in the world. He was still Travis, still the same guy who cracked dumb jokes and raided her fridge every time he came over. But to the world, he wasn't just an athlete anymore. He was a headline, a storyline. A piece of something bigger than himself? You talked to her today? Kylie asked. Yeah. He hesitated before adding, she's handling it better than I am. Of course she was. Taylor had been through this before. She had spent years learning how to navigate the chaos, how to tune out the noise and focus on what mattered. But for Travis, this was new territory. Maybe take a page from her book, Kylie said. Let the world do what it's gonna do. Just don't let it mess with you. He chuckled, but it didn't sound as carefree as usual. Easier said than done. She didn't argue, because she knew he was right. This wasn't just some story that would fade in a few days. This was going to follow him, follow their whole family, for a long time. And the worst part? They weren't in control of it. Just be smart, she finally said. And if it ever gets to be too much, don't act like it's not. I hear you. She wasn't sure if he really did, but for now, it was the best she could do. When she hung up, she turned back to Jason, who had been listening from the couch. He raised an eyebrow. So? She sat down next to him, exhaling. He's fine. For now. Jason didn't look convinced. But for how long? She didn't have an answer, and that was what worried her the most.